There's no question that there are a lot of unknowns about how China and Russia may react when we push back on their adventurism and opportunism at sea. What's really important is that we match both political intent and will and military capability with whatever China and Russia wish to push in our direction.
The Carrier Strike Group has 9 ships, 32 aircraft and nearly 4,000 personnel on board. HMS Queen Elizabeth, it cost £3 billion. It's a major feat of British engineering. And as part of this group, it is sailing across the world to really showcase one of Britain's major capabilities.
Because we've got the carrier now in this group, we're able to go out to an area of the world that's very important for us, to show our allies there, to operate with them and show them that we still see this as important, and let people who maybe don't like us very much, or the way that the world order is, that actually stability and security is very important to us still.
As part of this deployment, you would expect our adversaries to really be keeping an eye on what the group is doing. HMS Defender went on a recce with a Dutch frigate in the Black Sea, and Moscow put out a response saying that it fired warning shots at the vessels for coming too close to its waters.
The Royal Navy ship is conducting innocent passage through Ukrainian territorial waters in accordance with international law. We believe the Russians were undertaking a gunnery exercise in the Black Sea and provided the maritime community with prior warning of their activity. No shots were directed at HMS Defender, and we do not recognise the claim that bombs were dropped in her path.
The greatest threat at the moment, I think, to world peace and to what I'll call, for want of a better word, the Western Alliance, the Western Allies, NATO and things, is Russia.
Сегодня у военно-морского флота России есть все необходимое для гарантированной защиты родной страны, наших национальных интересов.
We don't recognise the Russian annexation of Crimea. It was illegal. These are Ukrainian waters, and it was entirely right to use them to go from A to B.
We needed to show Russia, as we're showing them in the Baltic as well as in the Black Sea, that we expect to be able to exercise freedom of navigation.
I've had the pleasure of being on board HMS Queen Elizabeth when she was stationed off the coast of Cyprus. It is a huge piece of equipment. As we landed onto the vessel, F-35 fighter jets had to be scrambled because of Russian activity overhead.
These are the things that come and go with Russia. Disinformation, misinformation is something that we have seen regularly. We're not surprised by it, we plan for it. And we take all steps to make sure that we are not escalatory or indeed provocative. However, we will not shy away from upholding international law and our rights on the sea.
As regards China, they have been trying to sort of make the South China Sea and in waters for them, and they can't do that.
The Asia-Pacific region in particular has become important not just economically because it's a great powerhouse of economic output, but also because there are geopolitical tensions now on this fault line between China and Russia on the one hand and the free world democracies on the other. And that's expressing itself in a challenge to the international rules-based system at sea right now, the freedom of navigation. And so happily the carriers have arrived at just the right time to help the free world reinforce the message that we live in a rules-based world at the moment, and we need to face down and not appease confrontation from these authoritarian powers.
The Navy has always regarded the right of innocent passage as correct. We haven't really had ships out in the Far East to be able to exercise this on this sort of scale for a long time. I took the last major carrier battle group out to the Far East, and we went up through the China Sea. That was in 1997, the withdrawal from Hong Kong.
If we look at the continent of Eurasia, we see the big two authoritarian powers, Russia and China, dominating that continent on land at the moment. And they're very dismissive about this tiny collection of states called Europe on the end of what they call their continent. And what they're seeking to do now is dominate the seas that surround Eurasia. That's everywhere from the Indian Ocean through to the Mediterranean, the Baltic, the Black Sea, the Arctic, and of course the Asia-Pacific region. And so what they're trying to do is say, look, we've got exclusive jurisdiction on waters that we claim.
Военно-морское присутствие России обеспечено практически во всех районах Мирового океана.
Now, anybody who knows anything about international maritime law knows that you can undertake innocent passage within anybody's territorial seas, out to 12 miles. You can conduct any operations you like between 12 and 200 miles, which are expressed as the limits of the exclusive economic zone. So, with Russia trying to extend its jurisdiction beyond that, and China indeed claiming jurisdiction in what it calls the 9 or 10-dash line, depending on which day of the week it is, and that 10-dash line goes out to 1,500 miles in some cases. So this is a gross aggregation of jurisdiction by China, which the free world powers are determined to contest and also confront.
When the Telegraph revealed the route that the carrier strike group would be taking, lots of MPs weren't happy when they found out that it was deliberately avoiding the Taiwan Strait. Now, defence sources said it didn't geographically make sense. It would be like going from A to C to B. But lots of MPs said that we should really use this opportunity to go through that contested part of water and show China that we don't recognise their ownership on it.
There's no question that there are a lot of unknowns about how China and Russia may react when we push back on their adventurism and opportunism at sea. My own experience from the Cold War and from other strategic sort of constructs is the fact that weakness is a provocation, and that balance of intention, balance of capability is very important in the way people assess risk. If there's an imbalance or an asymmetry in risk perceived by one side or the other, it tends to lead to conflict whether you want it or not. And so what's really important is that we match both political intent and will and military capability with whatever China and Russia wish to push in our direction. We're seeing the emergence of two blocks in the world now. The first is an authoritarian Eurasian-based bloc, which is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. On the other hand, you've got a free world maritime democratic bloc, United States, Canada, parts of Europe, certainly the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan, and probably India as well. Now, what's going to happen is all the other countries are going to align themselves with one bloc or the other, depending on the interests of their elites and governments over the next 5 to 10 years. But I think the fault line between those maritime democracies and these authoritarian Eurasian states will provide really all the friction and all the talking points over the next decade or so.